episode number 173 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Jenna DeFord. Jenna is the founder of the Guidance Agency, which is an egg donation and surrogacy agency, helping intended parents expand their families. They connect, counsel, and guide families on the road to parenthood using their firsthand experience, expertise, and handpicked network of surrogates and donors. Welcome to the podcast, Jenna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so I'd love for you to share your story and also talk about the Guidance Agency and what you do.
Great. Yeah, more than happy to. So many years ago, I actually started as an egg donor. My entire team, we were all egg donors, helping families go through this journey. And then as we all got older, we found ourselves in the same situation as the intended parents we were actually helping. So it was a little disheartening to help so many families and find out we were having complications ourselves, unrelated. So with that experience, we decided we wanted to help parents the best we can since we've been in everyone's shoes as an egg donor, as a parent, and as a surrogate. So we help parents try to make this a stress-free journey, trying to find the best egg donor and gestational carrier for them.
And what was, if you don't mind me asking, what was your story?
That's pretty much it.
Uh-huh.
So I was an egg donor multiple times. And then I actually had ovarian torsion where I lost my fallopian tube ligament and ovary. And due to that, I needed to freeze my own eggs.
Mm.
And then I wasn't married at the time, but any future relationship, I had to bring that up. So it's like,
Right.
how do you feel about making embryos with me right now? So I right now just have frozen eggs and embryos, but my husband and I are working on what's the next step for us, emotionally and financially. So I haven't gone through my IVF yet. I know everything to prepare for, but we're not there yet personally. Still helping other people go through it.
Got it. Yeah, I always like to know the person personally because I do find that a lot of times it is very related to what they do.
Mhm.
And it's really fascinating. I know a lot of people, I know some, like a lot of my patients and clients that have gone through the egg donor route and are so happy. But I
Mhm.
also know some people that in the beginning are resistant to it. So I really wanted to bring this up because this is a very important topic because it is an amazing thing that people have access to with the
Mhm.
modern day technology. It's an amazing thing that people can actually carry. And then even same-sex couples,
Mhm.
the fact that it opens it up so much. One of the things that I loved, I remember learning about, or yeah, I mean, it's something that's obvious, but when you're actually thinking about it, it's incredible, is when two women
Mhm.
have, well, one will carry the other's egg.
Yep.
And it's such a beautiful way to really share in the whole experience of having the baby. So there's so many different things that this benefits.
Mhm.
Let's talk about, I guess, who would benefit and what the process is. We can start out with who can benefit from this.
Yes, definitely. And I do love those stories too. I think the craziest, neatest science story we've had is two dads, having fertilized their embryos together and put one of each of theirs in a surrogate and had twins that were
Oh,
siblings, but
that's
one related
nice.
to each dad. And
It's beautiful.
that's beautiful. That's
It
absolutely
is.
gorgeous. So rare story, but it can happen. So anyone who is going through the either infertility journey, single parents by choice, we do have a lot of parents that they just need third parties to help them get to this point. And like you said, the LGBTQ community, if they need other people, whether that's an egg donor or surrogate or both, anyone who needs extra pair of hands. Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. And do you guys do embryo donor as well?
We do not. It is a little tricky, but we do connect parents if they with clinics that have that option if they would like to go the embryo donation route. That tends to be mostly in-house with clinics directly versus an agency.
So if somebody does get to the point where they realize, okay, I need to get an egg donor,
Mhm.
what is the process? How do they find an egg donor? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so typically parents come to us referred by their clinic, or they are on their own in their own research. They would register with our agency, like many fertility agencies, and fill out a very extensive questionnaire. We want to know everything.
Yeah.
If you dream it, we want to know it because we want to find the right fit for you. It's not just about how a donor looks. It may be personality or ancestry you want to pass down.
Hmm.
Maybe you're Polish and you want them to have a Polish connection. You name it. Even similar passions and interests. We want to know everything that's important to you, so you still feel that connection if that was important to you in your genetics. So we collect all that information, including pictures, if you would like us to do a deep dive into finding someone with absolutely similar characteristics.
Hmm.
And then we present profiles to these surrogates. It is kind of like matchmaking,
Hmm.
where we present these profiles. They're initially anonymous unless they would like to have a relationship with a potential donor. And we see who sparks their interest in it, who they have a connection with. These profiles have everything you can think of, from baby pictures to family photos, SAT scores,
Oh,
you
wow.
name it. Oh yeah, it's very involved. It's very thorough because it's more than it needs to be more than just a piece of paper. We also do video interviews with every egg donor so that the parents can see their personality come through and see that they're real and hear their voice. So it's
Hmm.
more than pictures and a piece of paper.
Amazing. And so people do opt sometimes, and it has to obviously be reciprocal to have the egg donor in their life or in the child's life.
That's right. It's rare. It's not that often
Hmm.
that we see that, maybe a handful a year, but a few people choose to go down the known route where they do exchange information. But 99% of matches are anonymous. Um, but a lot of families leave room in their contracts that if they were to change their mind, they can reach out to a donor and facilitate communication later. Um,
And
mhm.
typically, people would still have their own IVF clinics. What do you freeze the eggs? Like how does that work?
And that's a great question. That's most of the phone calls we get. So we don't do any of the medical part. Um, Parents come to us normally established with the clinic, no matter they can be anywhere in the country. We
Hmm.
actually have parents all over the world, typically who are using US clinics. So wherever the parents are established, we facilitate the egg donor or surrogate to go to them, to go
Okay.
there. So
So you're
that's
like
our
yeah, the matchmaker, like you said.
matchmaker, and we travel agency, we do it all. So we make sure the donor is there at their facility because it's important that the donor meets the parents' doctor's expectations. Every
Hmm.
clinic has slightly different criteria for an egg donor.
Hmm.
There's national standards, but each doctor is unique. And these parents have a relationship with that doctor. We trust them. So the donor needs to go there to be screened under their standards and
I
the relation.
see. So it's not like their eggs are frozen somewhere else and then they decide to use it. It's literally they pick the donor and then the donor comes to the same clinic and gets a retrieval done, and then
That's right.
those eggs fertilize with
Mhm.
the family's the man's sperm, and then they
Or
have
donor
their
sperm. Mhm.
or a
There can
donor,
be
right?
lots of people involved.
Yes, but it'll basically fertilize at the clinic.
That's right. Yes. So it's called a fresh cycle. So there are cryobanks, egg banks, where you can buy eggs ready to go. And that is becoming a more affordable option. And the science is getting better and better. And we're happy to see that happen because that means it's accessible to more parents. But many parents want a fresh donor. Uh,
Hmm.
and because it does tend to give them more options. You tend to have more eggs to choose from, and a little bit more control in the process. So yes, there is both, but right now we only offer fresh donors ready to go for a fresh cycle.
Okay, so it's only fresh cycle. The reason I ask is because sometimes people want the same siblings to
Mhm.
be, the same genetics. So do they not have that option to freeze some of the embryos?
They do. So an egg donor on average will retrieve about 20 eggs. So they should, if it's a cycle that goes really well, they should have additional embryos frozen ready to go. They keep all genetic material retrieved from the donor, whether that's 10 eggs or 40 eggs. That's all theirs for embryo creation. So the hope is that they have additional embryos
Hmm.
ready to go for the future. We've seen that. Otherwise, we've never seen a donor not available to do it again to
Hmm.
offer more in the future for a sibling journey. I myself have done that as an egg donor, where I was called again a few years later saying, we need more.
Okay,
and
got
we
it.
and
But
they come back.
the reason I ask is because you said it's only fresh, like fresh for the first time, but they could freeze the other
Yes.
ones for later cycles if need be.
Mhm. Yes, that fresh versus frozen is a little tricky in this landscape of things. But yes, everything is theirs to freeze, and I would say everybody freezes these days.
Yeah,
So not frozen eggs, but it is a fresh cycle versus fresh eggs. Mhm.
got it. So who would be a good candidate for a surrogate?
Same-sex couples, single parents by choice, such as single dads, uh, those going through IVF, or those who, have explored that option, has exhausted their own treatment and need a third party. So normally at that point, it's a doctor recommendation, um, unless you need another person to help you. Mhm.
Got it. So basically, a surrogate, I mean, I think a lot of people know what this is, but just to kind of clarify, is when another person is carrying the baby or the embryo that
Mhm.
ends up growing into a baby. And it's usually, I mean, what I've seen is also from the medical aspect is people who also their uterine lining doesn't respond to
Mhm.
stimulation or doesn't prepare or doesn't get thick enough or isn't able to really have the embryo that they have take, so they'll use a surrogate to carry that
Mhm.
embryo to full term.
That's
Um,
right. So, however those embryos are created, whether they used a donor or not, or if they've had lots frozen and they've had multiple attempts, they start pursuing surrogacy. So we only work with gestational surrogacy, where the embryo is not related to the surrogate. But there are other agencies out there that work with traditional surrogacy, where the surrogate is biologically the mother. It's her egg. We don't facilitate that. Uh,
mhm.
it's quite tricky and
It's actually
legally,
good to
ethically.
mention though, because I don't
Mhm.
like I don't know that a lot of people know the difference or know that that's like those two are options.
Yeah. Surrogates used interchangeably, but yeah, there's gestational surrogacy or gestational carrier, where the surrogate is not related to the embryo whatsoever. And then there's traditional surrogacy, where it is her egg being used. So normally that's an IUI or IVF in that case.
Got it. And then typically, what's the price range for both?
Yeah, that's the fun part. So unfortunately, unfortunately, it is an expensive process. We do our best to meet any parent where they are in their budget. We do partner with quite a few grants and other, lenders to give them the best option. But realistically, in the United States today, not just with our agency, a surrogate journey can be about $100,000 experience.
Wow.
That's including everything, not just us. So
Hmm.
that's surrogate compensation, your the work with your doctor, medications, you name it. So it is
Hmm.
quite pricey.
Yeah.
Um, and it really ranges. So we work with parents the best we can to make it budget friendly. Um, Typically by finding a surrogate open to more ethical and fair compensation, and those who have great insurance. There's lots of little tricks we can use to get them into a comfortable area so we don't exhaust all their money and funds.
Are there like payment plans and that can be put in place? Just asking, to for the audience because I'm sure there's people that, want to know like what the options are.
Yeah, there are payment plans. So our agency fee can be broken up however is convenient for the parents.
Hmm.
The tricky part is compensation to a surrogate. So it's expected that parents have all the money they're going to pay a surrogate throughout the process or compensate the surrogate in escrow prior to anything really happening, where she's been medically cleared, there are contracts in place, they have to have all that money ready to go. So as much as we would like to make it payment plan in other areas, they do have to be prepared to fund an escrow account with all the surrogate's compensation and potential expenses. So if a surrogate has a $40,000 compensation, they have to be able to put that in an escrow account. And that is a lot. So that is a tough thing.
Yeah.
But all other parts, the medical, your clinic and ourselves, we are the easy part where we will, make a payment plan for the rest of our lives if that's what works best. But other areas aren't as easy to make more cost friendly.
So I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure if it's one of those like your thought being asked out loud.
No, go
Like
for it.
one of them is how do you ensure that they don't drink alcohol, like that they're well behaved and they're doing the right thing?
Yeah, great question. Besides giant contracts that everyone is bound to, they surrogates are medically evaluated by your
Uh-huh.
doctor. We call that
Okay.
medical clearance.
Mm-hmm.
So they do check for drugs, tobacco
Mm-hmm.
history, but they also go through extensive psychological evaluation, and that
Mm-hmm.
is where that would come up. It's about a 3-hour interview with a,
Mm-hmm.
licensed psychologist. So at that point, they we catch all those things. They also are monitored throughout the medications and the pregnancy. So by the OBGYN during the regular pregnancy, and prior to that, they're being monitored by the reproductive endocrinologist, the IVF doctor. So
So
it
here's
is being followed up
another.
on.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, here's another question I have. What happens if the surrogate loses the baby?
Yeah, that is a tough one. It does depend on a lot of factors. So compensation to a surrogate doesn't typically start until confirmation of heartbeat because of that reason. So
Mm-hmm.
we get really optimistically excited,
Mm-hmm.
but we are cautiously excited until we have heartbeat. And a surrogate does receive compensation up until that heartbeat is no longer there. So it depends on when that tragedy happens. So if it's
So
early
the
on,
compensation is really given sporadically throughout the
yes,
time of pregnancy.
yes, I know it's so
No, but
crazy, right?
I think a lot of people are curious. That's why I'm asking these
Yeah.
questions of how it
So
works.
while you fund that escrow with all the money you anticipate to pay a surrogate, they receive it in monthly installments. Yes,
Got
it
it.
is
Okay.
milestone payments. It is based on a contract. So, for example, if the compensation is $40,000, she typically receives $4,000 a month
Mm-hmm.
for 10 months or sooner based on delivery. So those would stop. The escrow company can only disperse payments based on your contract as well as us. So no one can ask for any money or pull out any money that isn't contractual. So you have us here as your team, as well as a team of lawyers on your escrow account to watch every dime that leaves that account. So yes, it is at milestones.
And then as far as egg donors, how much does that typically cost or range?
Great question. So right now, national average is about $25,000
Mm-hmm.
for medical and for our part of the process as well. That number goes up and down based on what the donor is requesting as compensation. So this is the difference between buying frozen eggs from a cryobank and
Mm-hmm.
working with your own fresh donor. Is at the cryobank, you don't have to compensate a donor for her pain and suffering, is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Uh, versus if it's a fresh donor, she's requesting a fee.
Mm-hmm.
That fee can be anywhere from $3,000 to $16,000. It can be very high. Many years ago, we had a rule in place by the ASRM that has since lifted that a donor couldn't request more than $10,000. There was a battle over that.
Mm-hmm.
So that has since been lifted. So a donor can technically request whatever she likes. But it is our job to advocate for the parents who are working with donors. What is fair? What is realistic? Because only sometimes these parents aren't just going through this once. And that is very difficult to ask of a parent to pay out that much. So we bridge that communication, both educating the donor what is fair and realistic, while also advocating it is her body and she can request whatever she wants, and then doing the same thing to parents, advocating for their budget and what is fair. So I would say right now it's between $7,000 and $10,000 what a donor will request. It is quite high.
So so you guys do not do any of the cryo, the frozen egg donors. You just do fresh. But the fresh could turn into a frozen if they have enough. They can choose to freeze it. If that were the case, and is it are you really paying per round? Is that really what it is? And then whatever's left, they get to keep and freeze?
That's right. They're paying a donor a one-time fee. Anything that is retrieved from that cycle is theirs, their
Got it.
rights to use, whether
Okay.
that is to fertilize them all, freeze them all, donate some at some point. Once the retrieval takes place, they have complete rights and parental rights to all that genetic material, to do everything with. So that is the hope, that they have an abundance, a healthy amount of eggs to work
Hmm.
with. So that's why a lot of parents gravitate to donors who have done this before, proven donors or repeat donors,
Hmm.
because we can look at their medical history and see how well they did. So it is tricky for first time donors to get their first cycle because that is an unknown. We don't know how they will do,
Got it.
other than some
Yeah.
early testing to evaluate how they'll respond. This is why you have people like me who've been a donor 6 times,
Hmm.
because my body did very well. So why not continue to help people? Because I'm very responsive to the process. So I would say
Got
the
it.
families I donated to had at least 36 eggs every time,
Oh,
and
wow.
more
Amazing.
than 10 embryos. So lots of opportunities.
That's
So
great.
this is why donors are normally between the ages of 21 and about 30,
Hmm.
because we're working with young, healthy candidates.
Right.
Um, the IVF doctor will do everything to evaluate them and make sure they are a good fit for egg donation. So
Hmm.
we'll have a beneficial outcome, because it is a procedure, it is medically involved, and a good doctor is not going to put anyone through that process if it's not going to have, um, an optimal outcome, a healthy, beneficial outcome.
And do you follow your clients into pregnancy, childbirth? Are there any cool stories that you
Oh, yes.
could share?
Well, with surrogacy, we're very there. We're there through postpartum. We're there the
Right.
whole process, and we try
Yeah.
to attend every birth, COVID permitting. With
Yes. Yeah.
COVID happening, we weren't allowed in as many rooms as we used to be. But yes, so we for surrogacy we do. For egg donation, it depends on the family. Sometimes, closing some tabs, as I call it, on some personal connections is what's best for them in their journey, because
Hmm.
they're focusing on their own health.
Right.
But we absolutely adore follow-ups if the
Hmm.
if the transfer takes, and baby pictures are our favorite.
Yeah, I
Please
know
send
it's
us
the best.
pictures. Yes, because we're mostly there for the struggle. We're mostly there for the hard part. So it
Mhm.
is very rewarding for us and for the families when we get to hear how it turned out. Other than me rushing to deliveries when parents can't get there. So we are so involved and so a part of the process that babies come when they want to come. And it's
Mhm.
definitely happened where we had families on the other side of the world, and the twins decided to show up a few months early.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had to
Wow.
jump on a plane and get there to be there with the surrogate. So the surrogate's not alone and she feels supported, and that somebody can, greet these little ones when they first arrive in the world. Um, and I was so impressed with the process. So the parents are on the plane as soon as possible, but babies are coming. And I appreciate the level of tech that has entered hospitals. As soon as those babies were born and sent over to NICU, just because they were little, doing fine and healthy, they had webcams over their bassinets
Oh, that's
immediately.
amazing. Oh my God. That's
I didn't know
beautiful.
that was a thing.
That's
And
so
the
cool.
parents,
So the new parents could see.
yes, they're running through an
It's
airport,
incredible.
like zooming their little newborns because they missed it. And that doesn't happen too often. Our goal is to make sure you are there
Yeah.
as soon as possible, but everybody is cheering you on to make sure you're not missing a moment.
Yeah.
So
I
that
love
was
that.
more my story because I had to jump onto a plane and be there. Um, as well as both my staff members are surrogates right now.
Hmm.
So come the next few months, I will be there with those parents and my teammates. So it's beautiful to see.
It
My
is.
one of my our match coordinator for egg donation, Jessica, was an egg donor, and then she herself needed IVF due to blocked fallopian tube she didn't know for many years. So she had multiple failed IUIs. She finally went through IVF and had her daughter through IVF. And because of that experience, she wanted to help a family as a surrogate. So I'm very excited for her delivery as a surrogate and for that family because she's paying it forward in the most beautiful way you
Yeah.
can imagine, that she knew what it was like to take about 8 years to conceive. And she's doing that for somebody else
It's
again.
amazing. It's a really beautiful
Mhm.
story. And
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, what did people do during COVID? Like, how were did they allow the parents in with the surrogate? Because I know things were really, really tough.
Very, yes. So it depended on the hospital and the state.
Hmm.
Some still allowed them in there. Masked up, I would say some only allowed one parent. And then it was a choice between who gets to be in the delivery room.
Hmm.
So there was that having a one person restriction was really difficult because a lot of surrogates want their spouse with them as well. They're their
Right.
coach, health support partner.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of times where a surrogate had to, or not had to, elected to not have her own support system for the sake of the parent being there. So I really hope we don't ever have to go back to that place of women delivering alone.
Yeah.
Some people were completely alone. We didn't have that in our cases, but I know of it. And um, there were restrictions on how many people could be in the room. Uh, Luckily, we didn't have any displaced babies or anybody. There,
Oh, thank
there
God.
wasn't. It was chaos in our industry as a whole
Yeah.
because there were babies born to families who couldn't enter the country due to travel bans.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
so we were very, very fortunate that we had everybody here ready to go with the timing of deliveries. We had quite a few parents stuck here for many months and couldn't return home
But
to,
how does that work? So, just out of curiosity, I know it's kind of
yeah,
off topic. Like,
no,
when
it's a
yeah,
lot.
when they weren't able to come in to the country to pick up their
Mhm.
babies, what happened?
So again, we didn't have to deal with any of these personally, but I know there's many agencies who can speak on this.
Hmm.
There were, I'm sure, power of attorneys in place for the babies to be placed with normally an agency staff member, so us.
Right.
So there definitely needs to be some reform in our industry because
Hmm.
that's kind of tricky,
Yeah.
dancing the line of what's ethical and what's the right thing to do. So if the first choice is if they have family in the country, they should go with family. The next choice is volunteers like ourselves,
Right.
agency staff to take in these newborns, because it should never be the surrogate's responsibility ever.
Yeah.
She should not, that expectation, that line needs to be drawn,
Right.
that it is not her responsibility, both for her own emotional well-being and healing, um, contractually as well. But they can also go into foster care or temporary housing. So it was a
Wow.
group of amazing people, a lot of lawyers and volunteers scattered throughout the country taking in newborns who
Wow.
was waiting for their parents. Mhm. So hopefully there it was a learning lesson and there are
Yeah.
some steps in place now.
Right.
We have a we the attorneys in our world, reproductive attorneys are absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
They will do anything you need them to do. Show up at the hospital last minute,
Hmm.
draw up paperwork. They are there to make sure uh, baby gets to where they need to go to be with their parents. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun.
I'd say,
Last
yeah,
year.
it's those are the things that you don't think about when you think about it, like originally, because things come
Hmm.
up and then, life happens and then pandemics happen and you just like, you don't expect certain things to, get in the way of picking up the
Hmm.
child.
Bad
And
weather. We've had many, many parents just happen to
wow.
be in a snowstorm right when the
Oh my
surrogate goes into
gosh.
labor.
Yeah, wow.
So I hope we can try to plan transfers for no winter deliveries, but that's not how science or babies
Yeah,
work.
totally.
But that happens quite a bit too. So that is our job, to prepare for everything to make
Yeah.
sure that that doesn't happen.
And
Mhm.
then you're there really to support that whole process and be there as like someone who connects lawyers and has a database of people really to support the whole process.
Yes, there are many, many third parties involved, and that
Hmm.
is a lot for a parent to take on their own. Many
Hmm.
parents do choose to go independent, where, or indie journeys, we call it, where they hire their own surrogate or their own egg donor. And then that is completely on them to navigate multiple medical clinics,
Hmm.
attorneys, escrow, hospitals, social workers. They have to do that all on their own. And that is a lot to
It
know,
is
to
a
become
lot.
an expert overnight.
Yeah,
So that is our entire job, is to take on all that stress so they
right.
can focus on setting up their nest and
Yeah.
planning for baby, and or take care of their own health if that's the case. And so we take care of all those third parties for them and bring them all together,
Got it.
facilitate all
Um,
the communication.
yeah, I'm sure it sounds like a very complicated thing. There's so many different parts and moving pieces. So if somebody wanted to work with you, you said you can work internationally, really.
That's right. Parents can be international, but we only work with clinics in the US and Canada.
Got it.
So we don't send surrogates or donors out of the US at
Hmm.
this time. There are other agencies available for that if you'd like. But especially with COVID, it's even trickier. But yes, many parents come here for medical tourism, or because surrogacy and egg donation is illegal in their countries.
Hmm.
So they come here. So wherever they're located, even if they don't have a clinic yet, we're happy to connect them or give them a list of doctors in their area, give them anything they need, no matter where they are in the journey. If they're just in their homework stage, we're happy to give them that as much time as they need to take it all in and make
Yeah.
a game plan.
So if somebody wants to reach out and is curious, first of all, is there like, how does that work? Do they have to get an appointment for a consultation? How much money, or is it free? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, consultations with us are completely free.
Hmm.
Our time is yours, to educate you and help you feel informed and ready to go. So registering for our database for egg donors and surrogates is also free. The only time our agency fee applies is when you found the one, when you
Hmm.
found the donor or the surrogate, or both. That's the only time contracts come into play and there's a exchanging of money.
Hmm.
But up until that, we are happy to be your agency, your coordinator, your travel planner, whoever you need us to be. So yes, they can sign up for consultation on the website. They can email me directly anytime. Give us a call, and we are available with anything they need.
Awesome. And what's your website? Even though I'm going to have this on the episode
Mhm.
notes, but just for the listeners to hear.
No, I appreciate that. I'm really bad about that. I wish just tell people, email me,
Oh,
text
no
me, I'm
worries.
around. But yes, guidanceagency.com. Instagram's always great too, if that's where you're at, guidance underscore agency. But the website under our contacts page will take you directly to schedule consultation with me.
Fantastic. Well, Jenna, thank you so much. This was really fascinating for me as well to dive more into this aspect because I haven't really worked with many people that have done surrogacy. Most of them, if anything, is egg donor, but it's a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I think it's really important for people to know about, to know that there are options
Mm-hmm.
and really how eh, much better it is when you do have a team behind you.
Mm-hmm. You do. I mean, support people who can go independent, but if you need an extra pair of hands, or you don't want to take on all that, or you just need maybe some coaching through it, we're happy to be those people. If you do plan on venturing out on your own, we can give you some of the tools you need, so you're not navigating through some of these, important steps like legal on your own. So we're definitely there. And yes, normally the consult's at least an hour. As you can tell, it's very involved,
Yes.
very detailed. So we have lots of spreadsheets and educational information, so you don't have to digest all this all at once. So if anyone who reaches out, we're happy to send out some of our educational documents and forms so they can take it all in one step at a time.
Awesome, Jenna. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you ever need anything, or your listeners do, just give us a call.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.